Welcome back, boys and girls. This week we're learning about a life of worship. Do you remember what worship is? Worship is showing God we love Him because He is most important of all. We can worship when we sing, when we thank God, and when we dance. Which one of these have you done before? Do you see this box? It has a message for you inside, and it'll give a hint about the Bible story we're learning about today. Can you guess what's in this box? Let's see what's in the box. You ready? What kind of stone is this? It's a very smooth stone. Oh, and there's another one. And another. Let's see what else. Okay, how many stones do we find? Let's count them together. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you think of a story from the Bible where a person uses 5 smooth stones? We're going to open up our Bible and hear the story. But before we do, let's hear our main point for today. Ready? Clap. God wins the battle. Can you stand up and say that with me? Clap. God wins the battle. David was the youngest and smallest member of his family, but God chose David, and God promised that he would one day become king instead of King Saul. You may also remember that David had lots of big brothers. David's brothers were soldiers who fought for God's people in King Saul's army. Now, God's people were in a battle with a group of enemies called the Philistines. Can you say Philistines? Philistines, great job. Both armies were camped out in the valley of El, but they had not yet started to fight. The Philistines had a champion fighter named Goliath. He was covered from head to toe in heavy armor. But guess what? He was also a giant. He was huge. Goliath challenged the Israelites to fight, and whoever lost would become slaves. When King Saul and the rest of God's people heard what Goliath challenged, they were afraid. Can you show me how afraid they were? Oh, you look scared. The people were weak, and they needed someone to rescue them. They had forgotten that God was on their team. One day, David's father asked him to do a chore instead of tending to the sheep at home. Jesse wanted him to take some food to his brothers on the battlefield. When he got there, Goliath had been teasing God's people for 40 days. Every man in King Saul's army was too afraid to fight him. David heard what Goliath said. He saw all the soldiers in God's army run away from Goliath in fear. But David was not afraid. Even though David was the smallest and weak, he knew that God was more powerful than any enemy. Because David believed this amazing truth, he was not afraid. David took his slingshot in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the river and put them in his shepherd's pouch. And then he went to the battlefield. Goliath saw David and thought, he is just a kid. He is no match for a champion like me. David told Goliath, I will defeat you so that all the earth may know that our God is the true God. When Goliath came near, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone. He slung it and it hit Goliath right in his forehead. The great champion Goliath fell to the ground and died. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they ran away. God helped David to win the battle. David knew God was stronger. He trusted God to win the battle and protect his people from the giant Goliath. He was not afraid because he trusted in our great God, who is mighty to save. God chose David to fight against Goliath to save God's people. Many years later, one of David's great-great-grandsons would come as an even greater king. I'm talking about Jesus. Did you know that we have enemies too? We do. We don't fight giants like Goliath, but God's people today fight against sin, death, and Satan. We cannot win the battle against sin alone. As our King, Jesus represents us. He fought our battle against sin and death and won. Because of this, we can know God and win the battle against sin. As we come to know him more and more, we'll see how big he is, how mighty he is, and we can learn to trust him. We trust God to win our battles, just like David trusted him to defeat Goliath. And because of this, we worship God. Do you remember what worship is? Worship is showing God we love him because he is most important of all. Now we are going to worship by praying. Can you show me your prayer hands? God, we come to you today and just thank you that your promises are true and that we can trust you in everything we do. I pray that we will get to know you better and learn about how good and great your love is, and that we would trust you in all situations. We love you, God, and we thank you for today. Amen. All right, guys, we'll see you again next week.